Have you ever stopped to think that the words we speak every day aren't just sounds, but the actual building blocks of our reality? A single poorly chosen phrase can shatter a relationship, destroy your reputation, or even worse, convince you of your own weakness. But what if I told you that the ancient sages, the Stoics, knew the secret to a way of speaking that makes a person virtually invulnerable to life's chaos? In this video, we're going to reveal 11 things a truly smart person, committed to Stoic principles, will never say. And I promise you, some of these phrases are likely ones you use daily, completely unaware of the damage they're doing to you. Are you ready to audit your language and gain true inner strength? Then stick around until the very end, because that final phrase is the most insidious trap set for our minds. Before we dive in, let's take a quick trip back to ancient Greece and Rome. That's where the philosophy of Stoicism was born. Forget everything you thought you knew about Stoics being emotionless statues. In reality, this was an incredibly practical operating system for life. Figures like the emperor Marcus Aurelius, the playwright Seneca, and the former slave Epictetus weren't just thinking high thoughts. They were searching for answers to the most pressing questions. How do you remain calm in the eye of the storm? How do you maintain happiness regardless of external circumstances? And their core idea was the dichotomy of control. They said there are things we can control: our thoughts, our judgments, our reactions, and our words. And then there are things we cannot control: the weather, other people's opinions, the past, and the future. Wisdom, according to the Stoics, lies in focusing all our energy on the former and accepting the latter with total serenity. This is precisely why controlling their speech wasn't just a matter of etiquette for them. It was a fundamental tool for training the mind and the spirit. Every single word was a step either toward chaos or toward harmony. So let's start with the first phrase you will never, ever hear a truly wise person say: "That's unfair." Let's face it, life constantly throws situations our way that feel utterly and completely unjust. A colleague gets promoted, even though you worked harder. Your flight is cancelled, shattering your vacation plans. Someone else takes all the credit for your idea. The first instinctive reaction is to throw your hands up in exasperation and cry out about cosmic injustice. But what's happening in that moment, according to the Stoics? By uttering that phrase, you are willingly handing over your inner peace to external circumstances. You are essentially declaring, "My happiness and tranquility depend entirely on the world always behaving exactly as I think it should." That, my friends, is a recipe for eternal misery. A Stoic like Marcus Aurelius, who personally dealt with betrayal, wars, and plagues, approached this entirely differently. He would ask himself, is the inherent fairness of the world under my control? The answer is clearly no. So what is the point of wasting precious energy on anger and self-pity? Instead, the wise person shifts focus. Instead of dwelling on, "That's unfair," they ask themselves a different question. What can I do with this? They don't deny the pain or the disappointment, but they use it as fuel. If a colleague got the promotion, they analyse what skills they might be lacking and immediately create a development plan. If the flight is cancelled, they see it as an opportunity to practice patience or even stumble into an unexpected adventure. That phrase, "that's unfair," turns you into a passive victim of circumstances. But the question, "what can I do?" transforms you into the active architect of your own destiny. This is the fundamental shift from childish resentment toward the world to adult responsibility for how you choose to respond to it. Remember this: the universe is under no obligation to conform to your expectations of fairness, but you can always meet your own high standards of virtue and wisdom in any situation, no matter how unjust it feels. That is where true power lies. The next dangerous phrase a wise person removes from their vocabulary is, "If only I had more money, I'd be happy. If only I'd been born into a different family, things would be better. If only my boss wasn't such a tyrant, I'd actually love my job." Sound familiar? This speech pattern is pure mental poison. It contaminates your present and paralyzes your future. At its core, it's a form of escapism, a retreat from reality into a fictional world of perfect conditions. When we say if only, we create a fantasy where our problems are solved, not by our own efforts, but by a shift in external circumstances, circumstances which, as the Stoics remind us, are completely outside of our control. Seneca wrote that the heaviest burden is the burden we impose upon ourselves, and this phrase, if only, is exactly that kind of burden. It acts as a shield, letting us completely shirk responsibility. Instead of working on our finances right here and now, we fantasize about winning the lottery. Instead of learning to set boundaries with a difficult boss or actively searching for a new job, we just wait for them to change. This is the posture of perpetual waiting. The wise person understands that life doesn't happen in the subjunctive mood. It happens in the present moment. They don't waste time lamenting the cards they weren't dealt. They look at the hand they do have and figure out how to play it the best way possible. Instead of saying, if only I had more money, they ask, how can I manage the money I have more effectively? What steps can I take today to increase my income tomorrow? Instead of, if only I had a different boss, they think, what communication skills can I develop to minimize conflict? Which aspects of my job are within my zone of control, and how can I excel at those? Swapping out if only for how can I, or what will I do, is the essential transition from a passive dreamer to an active doer. It is the recognition that the point of power is not in the hypothetical past or future, but right here, right now, in your hands. Stop waiting for perfect conditions. They will never arrive. Start acting within the conditions you have. That is the only path to real change. And here is the third phrase, the ultimate champion of self-sabotage. I can't. These two short words carry unbelievable destructive power. When we utter, I can't, we aren't just stating a fact. We are handing down a verdict against ourselves. We construct a seemingly insurmountable wall in our own minds. I can't speak in public. I can't learn this language. I can't lose weight. Each statement like this is a lock we voluntarily place on the door of our potential. The Stoics, especially Epictetus, who rose from slavery to become one of history's greatest philosophers, understood the fundamental lie behind this phrase. He taught that most of our I can'ts are actually disguised I don't want, or I'm afraid to. I can't speak in public often translates to I fear judgment and failure, and that fear is stronger than my desire to share my ideas. I can't learn the language might be masking. I don't want to dedicate hundreds of hours of effort to this, or feel foolish while making mistakes. A wise person audits their list of I can'ts. They replace this categorical and absolute phrasing with something more honest and constructive. Instead of I can't, they say, I need to develop this skill, or I don't know how to do this yet. Do you feel the difference? I can't is a dead end. I don't know how yet is the starting point of a journey. It implies that a solution exists. We just need to discover it. This turns the problem from an insurmountable obstacle into an interesting quest. Furthermore, a wise person breaks down a huge I can't into small, manageable I cans. I can't run a marathon transforms into I can run 1 kilometre today. I can't write a book becomes I can write 1 paragraph today. This method, based on the philosophy of gradual progress, allows you to bypass psychological resistance and move forward step by step. Remember, the words you use internally have the power of self-suggestion. By saying I can't, you program your brain for failure. It stops looking for solutions because you've already told it none exist. Start saying, I will try. I will learn. I will find a way. And you will be astonished how many walls that seem made of stone turn out to be nothing more than cardboard. Let's turn our attention to the fourth linguistic trap. The phrase, it always happens this way, or its close cousin, it never works. These generalizations are cognitive distortions in their purest form. Our brain is fundamentally lazy. It loves simple patterns and easy labels. When we face a setback, for instance, we're late for a meeting 3 times in a row because of traffic, It's easier for the brain to conclude, I'm always late, or it's impossible to be on time in this city, rather than analysing the specific causes of each instance. But what does this kind of language really do? It robs us of our agency and locks us into a cage built of past experience. If you convince yourself that you never can maintain a relationship, you will subconsciously sabotage any new connection just to prove yourself right. If you believe you always fail interviews, you'll walk into the next one already feeling defeated, which will likely lead to an actual failure. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The Stoics advocated for a sober, precise perception of reality. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, constantly reminded himself to view every event in isolation, as it is, without the burden of the past or anxiety about the future. A wise person follows this principle. Instead of saying, my ideas are never valued, they would say, my idea wasn't supported at the last meeting. Let's figure out why. Was the presentation weak? Was the timing poor? How can I improve my argument next time? This approach replaces emotional generalization with rational analysis. It gives you back control. Instead of being a victim of the endless always or never, you become an investigator who studies specific situations and seeks specific solutions. Try an experiment. For 1 week, track how often you use words like always, never, constantly, or forever. Every time you catch yourself doing it, stop and ask, is this really true? Did this happen absolutely every single time? Without exception, 99% of the time, you'll realize it's an exaggeration. Replace it with more precise language. Sometimes, lately, or in 3 out of 5 cases. This simple shift in language will help you escape the prison of negative generalizations and see the world and your opportunities within it much more realistically and optimistically. The 5th phrase that a wise person strikes from their vocabulary is particularly tricky because it often hides under the guise of politeness. I'm just telling it like it is, or its common variations. I'm just being honest, or the classic setup. Don't take this the wrong way, but these phrases are almost always followed by unsolicited criticism, a tactless remark, or straight-up rudeness. The person using this verbal shield is attempting to absolve themselves of responsibility for their words and their impact. They are essentially saying, it's not me hurting your feelings, it's objective reality. I'm just the messenger. This is manipulation, plain and simple. Firstly, what we label reality or the truth is almost always our subjective opinion, filtered through our experience, mood, and personal biases. Objective truth rarely exists when dealing with human relationships. Secondly, even if your remark contains a grain of truth, its value is determined not just by the content, but by the manner, the timing, and the ultimate purpose of the delivery. Stoicism is not just about inner fortitude, it's also about social responsibility and living in harmony with others. An intelligent person understands that the goal of communication is not merely to vent their truth, but to achieve mutual understanding, to help, or to improve a situation. Therefore, before speaking, they ask themselves a few key questions. First, what is my true objective? Do I genuinely want to help this person? Or do I just want to boost my own ego by putting them down? Or perhaps just relieve my own irritation? Second, is this the right time and place for this conversation? Criticizing a colleague in front of everyone isn't honesty, it's humiliation. Third, what is the best way to phrase this so that my words do more good than harm? Instead of saying, don't take this the wrong way, but your report is terrible, a wise person would say, I reviewed your report. The data is excellent. I think if we work a bit on the structure and maybe add a couple of visualizations, its impact would be even stronger. Would you like to sit down together and figure out the best way to do that? See the difference. The core message is the same, but the delivery changes everything. The first example is an attack that immediately triggers a defensive response. The second is an offer of collaboration that motivates growth. So the next time you feel the urge to use the phrase, I'll just tell it like it is, pause. Ask yourself if you truly just want to state a fact, or if you are aiming for a constructive outcome. Real honesty isn't rudeness disguised by a fig leaf of the truth. It is wisdom that knows the how, when, and why of speaking. The sixth phrase we need to banish from our vocabulary is, I have no choice. This is arguably one of the biggest limiting beliefs we impose upon ourselves. This statement is the verbal expression of learned helplessness. By saying it, we surrender all control over our lives to external forces, people, and circumstances. Consider the examples. I can't quit this job I hate. I have a mortgage. I have no choice. Or, I have to socialize with these toxic relatives, their family. I have no choice. In these moments, we feel like a mere pawn on someone else's chessboard. But the core lesson of Stoicism, handed down to us by Epictetus, is that we always have a choice, even in seemingly inescapable situations. We may not choose the circumstances themselves. We can't choose whether we have a mortgage or who our family members are. But we can always, absolutely always, choose our response to those circumstances. This is our ultimate freedom, and it's one that no one can take away. A wise person facing a tough situation will never say, I have no choice. Instead, they rephrase it. I have several options, and each one comes with a cost. Let me weigh them carefully. Instead of saying, I can't quit, they reason like this. Option 1, stay at this job. Cost, emotional burnout, stress, and stagnation. Benefit, stable salary to pay the mortgage. Option 2, start looking for a new job immediately. Cost, temporary uncertainty and the necessity of applying effort. Benefit, a chance to find fulfilling work and possibly better income. Option 3, find a side hustle to build a financial cushion, then quit. Cost, less free time in the short term. Benefit, achieving freedom in the long term. When you frame the problem this way, you stop being a victim. You become a strategist, analysing risks and rewards. You reclaim the authorship of your own life. Even under the most extreme conditions, choice remains. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived concentration camps, wrote that everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. So, when you feel stuck in a dead end and believe there are no options, know this. It's an illusion. There is always a choice. It might be difficult. You might not like any of the available options. But recognizing the mere fact that you do have a choice is the first and most crucial step toward taking the steering wheel of your life back into your own hands. The seventh phrase you will never hear a truly wise person utter is, he's driving me crazy, or she absolutely infuriates me. Initially, this sounds like a simple description of our feelings, but as always, the devil is in the details. The very structure of this phrase contains a fundamental cognitive error. It suggests that another person has direct, authoritative control over your emotional state. It's as if they carry a remote control, pressing the irritation or anger button, and you are powerless to resist. This completely contradicts the core tenets of Stoicism. The Stoics taught that it is not the events or the people themselves that upset us, but rather our judgments and interpretations of them. Imagine a colleague fails to submit a report on time. That is merely a fact, but your reaction, the irritation, the anger, the panic, stems entirely from your judgment. He's undermining me. He clearly doesn't respect my time. Now my deadlines are blown. It is this judgment, not the colleague's action, that is the true source of your distress. A wise person recognizes this and accepts full responsibility for their own emotional state. Instead of stating, he annoys me, they analyze the situation internally. They tell themselves, when the report is late, I feel annoyed because I start worrying about the project timeline. This slight rephrasing carries profound significance. First, you cease externalizing blame and instead focus on analyzing your own emotional response and its root cause. Second, it immediately clears the path toward constructive action. If the core issue is your anxiety over deadlines, the solution isn't shouting at the colleague, it's finding ways to manage risk. This might mean setting clear interim milestones or establishing a robust contingency plan. So, as Marcus Aurelius advised, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. So, the next time someone acts contrary to your expectations, pause. Deliberately separate the verifiable fact from your interpretation of it. Fact: someone arrived late to the meeting. Your interpretation: he doesn't respect me. But what if they had a flat tire? What if their child was ill? You simply don't know the full story. What you do know is that your resultant irritation is your choice. You have the power to choose understanding, patience, or focusing purely on a constructive solution. By rejecting the phrase, "he makes me furious," you reclaim authority over your emotional landscape, finally becoming the true master of your internal world. The eighth phrase a truly intelligent person painstakingly avoids is, "I'm too old or too young for this." This excuse is one of the most convenient and prevalent ways we justify staying put and never stepping outside our comfort zone. We hear things like, "I wish I could learn coding, but I'm 40. How can I possibly keep up with the 20-year-olds? Or, "I'd launch my own business, but I'm only 22. Who's going to take me seriously?" In these scenarios, age is weaponized as an insurmountable barrier, an impenetrable wall separating us from our deepest aspirations. The Stoics would have called this mindset voluntary servitude to societal stereotypes. While they prized the wisdom and experience that come with age, they firmly believed that virtue and self-improvement recognized no age limits. Philosophy is a lifelong endeavor. It is never too late and never too early to learn. A truly intelligent individual sees age not as an obstruction, but as a unique and powerful resource pool. If they perceive themselves as too old, they reframe the thought. Yes, I may have less raw energy than the young generation, but I have wisdom, a robust network, financial stability, and life experience they lack. How can I leverage these assets? They understand their goal is not to compete, but to pursue personal growth at their own sustainable pace. Conversely, if they feel too young, they rationalize. True, I have less experience, but I possess boundless energy, mental flexibility, a readiness to take risks, and the most valuable asset of all, time. How can I harness this energy to rapidly accumulate that missing experience? They don't apologize for their youth, they turn it into their competitive edge. History is overflowing with examples that dismantle this excuse. Colonel Sanders founded KFC well into his 60s. Mark Zuckerberg launched Facebook at 19. The crucial factor is never the number on your birth certificate, but how effectively you utilize the time you have. The phrase, "I'm too old young," is ultimately a symptom of fear. Fear of failure, fear of looking foolish, and, most importantly, fear of change. Recognizing that fear is the essential first step toward conquering it. Instead of hiding behind the number on their ID, the wise person states, "I'm slightly intimidated to start this at my age, but I will try anyway. What is the smallest, most actionable first step I can take today?" This approach unlocks the doors to genuine lifelong learning and growth, transforming every stage of life, not into a limitation, but into a brand new chapter full of unique possibilities. The ninth phrase a wise person will never utter with certainty is, "I know everything about this." This statement is not a sign of strength, but a glaring weakness. It is a display of arrogance and intellectual complacency. The moment a person decides they have reached the summit of knowledge in any field, they cease to develop. Their mind becomes closed off to new information, alternative viewpoints, constructive criticism, and growth. They build a fortress of their own dogma around themselves and stop seeing the real world in all its complexity and diversity. Socrates, a precursor to Stoicism, famously stated, "I know that I know nothing." The greatest wisdom is contained within this paradox. Acknowledging the limits of one's own knowledge is the prerequisite for true learning. A truly intelligent person always leaves room for doubt. They approach every subject with the beginner's curiosity. Instead of declaring, I know everything about marketing, they would say. I've been working in marketing for 15 years, and here is what I understand so far. But I'm always open to new ideas. Tell me about your perspective. This approach not only facilitates their own continuous learning, but also naturally draws people in. Nobody likes a know-it-all. People are attracted to those willing to listen, learn, and admit their mistakes. The proclamation, "I know everything," instantly shuts down any true dialogue and turns it into a monologue. A wise person, however, values dialogue because they understand that truth is often born precisely from the collision of different opinions. They aren't afraid to say, "I could be wrong," or "That's an interesting take, I hadn't considered that." This position of intellectual humility is a mark of immense inner strength and self-assurance. Only a truly confident individual is unafraid to show that they don't know something. They understand that their value lies not in the volume of accumulated knowledge, but in their capacity and desire to learn new things. So, if you want to keep growing, strike the phrase, "I know everything," from your vocabulary. Replace it with, "I want to learn more." Be a lifelong student in the school of life, and your mind will always remain sharp, flexible, and open to the amazing discoveries the world has ready for you. The 10th phrase a truly wise person avoids is, "I told you so." This phrase is loaded with passive aggression and subtle judgment. These words are typically uttered right after someone has failed, either by following advice contrary to yours or by outright ignoring your previous warning. Ostensibly, you are just stating a fact that you were right, but in reality, you are prioritizing your ego over empathy and genuine support. The true purpose of this phrase isn't to help, it's to assert your superiority at the other person's expense. It shouts, "See? I was right and you were wrong. I'm smarter." It's kicking someone when they are already down, a cruel display of dominance delivered at the moment of their greatest vulnerability. Stoicism instructs us to value compassion and strive to be genuinely useful to others. A wise individual recognizes that when a friend, colleague, or loved one makes a mistake, the absolute last thing they need is a painful reminder of their error. They require support, practical help, and constructive analysis. Instead of reveling in being right, a truly intelligent person shows empathy. They will offer something like, "I'm genuinely sorry this happened. How can I help you right now?" Or, if the situation allows, "Let's work together to figure out how to fix this and what lessons we can draw from this experience for the future." This approach instantly shifts the dynamic from confrontation to collaboration. You demonstrate that you are standing with that person, not against them. You are a unified team tackling a challenge together. The "I told you so" phrase is a genuine trust killer. It teaches people to hide their problems and failures from you next time, fearing condemnation. Conversely, offering support and compassion strengthens bonds and creates a safe space where people feel empowered to risk making mistakes and learning from them. Furthermore, the persistent need to prove one's correctness is actually a sign of deep insecurity. A person who is genuinely confident in their knowledge and wisdom doesn't need to rub other people's noses in their mistakes to feel significant. Their self-worth is not dependent on the missteps of those around them. So, the next time you feel the urge to utter that stinging phrase, stop yourself. Ask this crucial question: what matters more right now, my ego or my relationship with this person? Do I want to be right, or do I want to be useful? The wise choice will always favour usefulness. The 11th phrase a truly wise person avoids using as an excuse is, "That's just the way I am." This statement is merely another form of intellectual surrender. When someone uses this in response to criticism of their behaviour, perhaps a quick temper, persistent tardiness, or crippling pessimism, they are essentially declaring that they are both unwilling and incapable of change. They present their character as a monolithic, unchangeable given, something carved in stone since birth. They might say, "I yell at people because I'm a choleric. It's just my personality." Or, "I'm always late. I'm naturally disorganized." This is an incredibly convenient stance, as it completely absolves us of responsibility for our actions and their impact on others. But the Stoics believed the opposite. They were convinced of the possibility and the necessity of continuous moral self-improvement. For them, character, or as they would say, virtue, is not something we are given. It is something we forge daily through our choices, habits, and actions. Seneca famously wrote, "It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that they are difficult." In the same vein, we are not inherently hot-tempered. We become quick-tempered through the habit of repeatedly giving in to anger. The intelligent person understands that their character is not a destiny, but a lifelong project. They do not deny their innate tendencies, but they refuse to let those tendencies dictate their behaviour. Instead of saying, "That's just the way I am," they adopt a different phrasing. "Yes, I have a tendency towards impatience, and I'm actively working to control my reactions better." Or, "I know I struggle with punctuality, so I'm implementing specific planning techniques to combat that weakness." This type of phrasing demonstrates self-awareness, humility, and most importantly, accountability. It shows that the individual is not passively accepting their flaws, but is actively striving to become the best version of themselves. This approach naturally earns respect and cooperation from others. By abandoning the fatalistic phrase, "That's just the way I am," you unlock boundless possibilities for growth. You acknowledge that your habits, your reactions, and even your personality traits are nothing more than the result of consistent practice. And if you have practiced yourself into being disorganized or angry, then you can certainly practice yourself into being disciplined, calm, and wise. Let's dig a little deeper and examine another phrase that acts as a subtle poison to our potential. That phrase is, "I need more motivation." We often utter it when we're procrastinating or struggling to start an important task. We sit around waiting for some grand inspiration to strike, some magical impulse that will push us into action. We watch motivational videos, read success stories, hoping to catch that wave. But there's a fundamental error in this approach, one the Stoics would have recognized instantly. They would argue that we are confusing cause and effect. We think motivation precedes action. But in reality, in the vast majority of cases, action precedes motivation. The wise person doesn't wait for motivation. They create it through discipline. They understand that momentum builds as you go. Instead of saying, "I lack the motivation to go to the gym," they say, "I will go to the gym because I decided to, regardless of how I feel." And what happens next? After the first 10 minutes of the workout, as the blood starts pumping, as they feel their muscles working, motivation appears. They start enjoying the process and want to keep going. Instead of, "I need motivation to write this article," they tell themselves, "I will write one paragraph, just one." They sit down and write that paragraph. And in the process, thoughts begin to align, new ideas surface, and suddenly they can't stop. Motivation isn't gasoline you pour into the tank before a journey. Motivation is a dynamo machine, a generator that you first have to spin up with your own effort before it starts producing energy. Relying on external motivation means being dependent on fleeting emotions and outside stimuli. It's like building a house on sand. Discipline, however, is the foundation you build yourself. It is the decision to do what needs to be done, even when you don't feel like it. And the paradox is that discipline ultimately creates the most resilient and authentic motivation, the kind based on self-respect and the quiet pride of a duty fulfilled. So stop waiting around for a sign. Stop looking for motivation. Just take the first smallest step, and you'll find that motivation catches up with you along the way. The next phrase a wise person approaches with extreme caution is, "I deserve better." At first glance, it feels like a powerful self-esteem boosting affirmation, and in certain contexts, like exiting a toxic relationship, it can be helpful. But far too often, this simple phrase reveals infantile entitlement and unrealistic expectations of the world. When we say, "I deserve," we inherently assume the universe or other people owe us something, simply for existing. We expect the best job, the ideal partner, and universal praise to be handed to us on a silver platter. This is a passive, demanding stance. Stoicism offers a radically different perspective. Stoics never focused on what they deserved from the world. Their entire focus was on the duty they owed to the world and to themselves. Their central question was not about receiving, but about doing. Marcus Aurelius, despite being the emperor, reminded himself every morning that he must rise to serve his people, not to luxuriate in bed. He didn't think he deserved power and honours. He considered it his duty to be a virtuous and just ruler. The wise person replaces the mindset of deserving with the mindset of creation and qualification. Instead of thinking, I deserve a raise, he asks, what must I do to qualify for that role? What value do I need to create for the company? And what skills must I develop so that my promotion becomes logical and inevitable? Instead of saying, I deserve respect, he asks, how should I conduct myself to earn the respect of worthy people? This shift in thinking is monumental. It moves the locus of control entirely from the external world back to yourself. You stop being a passive beggar with an outstretched hand and become the architect of your own life. You don't wait for things to be given to you. You create the value that naturally attracts the desired results. Furthermore, the constant feeling that you deserve something you aren't getting is a direct path to resentment, envy, and deep disappointment. You will perpetually compare yourself to others and be angry that they received what you felt was rightfully yours. Focusing on personal growth and service, however, brings satisfaction and inner harmony, regardless of external rewards. So be careful with this phrase. Don't strive to get what you believe you deserve. Strive instead to become the person who is worthy of the very best. Another common phrase that poisons our minds and stops us from moving forward is the simple declaration, "It wasn't my fault," or "I'm not the one to blame." This is nothing more than an instinctive defensive reaction. Nobody likes feeling guilty after all. So, when something goes wrong, a project fails, a relationship hits a conflict, or a serious mistake happens, the first instinct is often to find a scapegoat. We try to shift the blame onto a colleague, a partner, circumstances, or anyone but ourselves. But while this tactic provides momentary relief for our ego, it causes tremendous damage in the long run. First, it robs us of the crucial opportunity to learn. If every failure is someone else's fault, what lesson can we possibly take away for ourselves? None at all. We stay stagnant, stuck on the same level, ready to make the same mistakes over and over again. Second, it destroys trust and relationships. People don't want to work or live with those who never admit their errors. This breeds an atmosphere of toxicity and mutual recrimination. Stoics, by contrast, championed radical responsibility. They taught us to accept full ownership for everything within our control, which, as we know, means our thoughts, our judgments, and our actions. A thoughtful, intelligent person facing a problem doesn't look for someone to punish. They look for causes and solutions. Their first question isn't, who messed up? But rather, what was my contribution to this situation? Even if the primary fault objectively lies with someone else, they still analyse their own role. Did I communicate the task clearly enough? Did I fail to check the process midway? Did I perhaps ignore the early warning signs? This approach has nothing to do with self-flagellation. Its goal isn't to wallow in regret, but to extract the maximum possible lesson from the situation so that it never repeats itself in the future. This is a position of strength. The person who says, I see where I bear responsibility in this, commands respect. They demonstrate maturity, honesty, and a profound willingness to grow. People want to follow them. People want to work with them. So, the next time things don't go according to plan, suppress that instinctive urge to find a scapegoat. Instead, look in the mirror and ask, what could I have done differently? And what will I do differently next time? This ability to own the outcome rather than shift the blame is what truly distinguishes a leader from a follower and a sage from the average person. The 15th phrase we're tackling is often delivered with a heavy sigh. It's synonymous with utter hopelessness. It's all useless. This is the very essence of pessimism and defeatism, When someone says this, they are declaring defeat before they even attempt to enter the fight. They say, I want to get into shape, but it's useless. I'll just fall off the wagon anyway. Or, we could try to fix the relationship, but it's pointless. Nothing will change now. This phrase paralyzes the will and smothers any spark of hope. It creates a mental reality where any effort is predetermined to fail. Why bother doing anything if the outcome is already decided? Stoicism, however, is a philosophy of action and courage in the face of uncertainty. The Stoics never guaranteed success. They understood perfectly well that the final outcome of any endeavour is never fully within our control. You might prepare perfectly for an exam, only to be hit with a question you didn't study. You might create a groundbreaking product, but the market might not be ready for it. But for the Stoic, what truly mattered wasn't the result, but the effort itself. The intention, the goal was to do everything within your power, with maximum dedication and in accordance with virtue. The outcome you simply accepted as it came. Instead of sinking into despair and saying, it's all useless, the wise person applies what we call the Stoic test. They tell themselves, yes, this situation looks difficult. The chances of success might be slim, but what is the smallest, simplest step I can take right now in the right direction? They don't dwell on the final goal, which can seem daunting and unreachable. They focus on the process. I can't guarantee I'll lose 20 pounds, but I can guarantee that today I will take a 30-minute walk and skip dessert. I don't know if we can save this relationship, but today I can initiate a calm and honest conversation. This small steps approach works wonders. It breaks the paralysis, restores a sense of control, and often leads to results that initially seemed impossible. That's because every small action fundamentally changes the situation and opens up new possibilities. Remember, declaring it's all useless is the most surefire way to make that statement a self-fulfilling prophecy. But doing what must be done, despite the odds, is the only chance you have to change the situation for the better. As Seneca said, luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. Your job is to prepare, not to predict the future. The 16th phrase is incredibly modern and often dominates consumer culture. I'll be happy when I buy that new car. I'll be happy when I get that promotion. I'll be happy when I finally go on vacation. We keep pushing our happiness off until later. We turn it into some kind of prize, achievable only after hitting a specific external goal. Psychologists call this phenomenon the hedonic treadmill. We're constantly chasing the carrot, believing that once we grab it, eternal bliss awaits. But as soon as we achieve it, buying the car, getting the job, the euphoria is short-lived. Very quickly, that new car is just transportation, and the new job brings a whole new set of problems. So we set a new target, a new carrot, and start running again, hoping that one will finally deliver the happiness we've been waiting for. Stoics considered this approach fundamentally flawed. They taught that happiness, or eudaimonia, isn't a destination, it's a way of travelling. It's not an external acquisition but an internal state, the result of a virtuous life, the ability to appreciate what you have, and the wisdom to accept what you cannot change. Epictetus argued that we should wish for things to happen not as we want them to, but as they actually do happen, and then our lives will unfold peacefully. A wise person does not let their happiness depend on future achievements. They learn to find joy and meaning in the present moment. They don't say, I'll be happy when I reach the summit of the mountain. They say, I am happy right now, enjoying the process of the climb, the view that opens up with every step, the fresh air, and the feeling of my body working. They practice gratitude for what they already possess, instead of worrying about what they lack. This doesn't mean you should abandon your goals and ambitions. Goals are vital, they give us direction. But the wise person separates the process of achievement from their fundamental feeling of happiness. They might strive for a promotion, but their self-worth and inner peace aren't dependent on whether they get it or not. They find satisfaction in the work itself, in developing their skills, and in overcoming challenges. Stop postponing your life. Happiness is available to you right here, right now. It's not found in the things you can buy or the status you can achieve. It is in your attitude toward life, your ability to value the present moment, and your commitment to living in alignment with your values. Let's examine the 17th phrase, one that often creeps into our daily conversations, especially when we're trying to dodge accountability or defer a tough choice. That phrase is, I don't know. Of course, there are situations when we genuinely don't know something, and acknowledging that, as we've discussed, is truly a sign of wisdom. But very often, these three words conceal something else entirely: laziness, fear, or a simple unwillingness to engage our minds. What do you want to do with your life? I don't know. How should we tackle this problem? I don't know. In these scenarios, I don't know isn't an honest statement about missing information. It's a tactic used to duck the question, shift the burden of decision-making onto someone else, or simply kick the problem down the road. This is a passive position, and it inevitably leads to stagnation. A clever person, even without a ready answer, doesn't use I don't know as a period. They use it as a comma, a starting point for investigation. Instead of defaulting to I don't know, a proactive person might say, that's a great question. I don't have the answer yet, but here's what I'm going to do to find it. Or, let me think about this and come back with some solid ideas tomorrow. Or even, I don't know, but I hypothesize we could try A and B. Let's analyze the potential options. This approach demonstrates proactivity and responsibility. It transforms uncertainty from a dead end into a launchpad for the thought process. This is absolutely crucial when you are in a position of leadership, or even just acting as a responsible member of a team or a family. People who constantly reply, I don't know, without any follow-up actions, eventually lose all credibility. They cease to be expected to provide solutions, and people stop relying on them. In contrast, those who are willing to take the initiative to search for an answer, even when they start from a blank slate, immediately earn trust and respect. The Stoics deeply valued rationality and logic. They viewed reason as the primary tool for understanding the world and solving problems. For them, abandoning the thinking process by resorting to the phrase, I don't know, would have been tantamount to rejecting their very human nature. So, the next time you catch yourself wanting to say, I don't know, hit the pause button. Ask yourself, honestly, are you genuinely unaware? Or are you simply unwilling to put in the effort to find out? If it's the latter, then force your brain to engage. Start asking questions, generating hypotheses, and actively seeking information. Transform your state of not knowing into an engaging quest for the solution. The 18th thing a wise person avoids throwing around carelessly is an empty promise or a rash vow. I swear I'll never eat sweets again. I promise I'll start running this Monday. I give you my word that I'll finish this project by tonight, even when you know perfectly well that it's physically impossible. We often make these kinds of commitments in the heat of the moment, trying to please someone else or simply to motivate ourselves. But broken promises, even those made only to ourselves, have a destructive effect. Every broken word erodes your integrity and undermines your self-discipline. Your inner voice stops trusting you. When you tell yourself for the 100th time that you'll start a new life on Monday, your subconscious is already laughing because it knows those are just empty words. The same is true in relationships with others. If you constantly make promises you don't keep, your reputation suffers. People stop relying on you. Your words lose their weight. You become someone whose yes means nothing. The Stoics place tremendous value on aligning words with actions. For them, virtue wasn't found in pretty speeches, but in tangible deeds. A wise person understands the power of their word and treats every commitment with the utmost seriousness. Before making a promise, they soberly assess their capabilities. They would much rather say, I can't guarantee I'll finish this by evening, but I will put in maximum effort to do everything possible, and I'll keep you updated on the progress, than give an unrealistic assurance. That is far more honest and earns greater respect. Instead of grand oaths, He prefers quiet, consistent action. He doesn't shout to the world that he's quitting smoking. He just quits, day after day, without unnecessary drama. His actions speak louder than any words. This principle is known as under-promise and over-deliver. It is the golden rule for building trust, both with yourself and with others. If you want your words to carry weight, stop throwing promises around carelessly. Speak less, but let every single word be backed by action. Let your yes be harder than steel, and your no be final and clear. That is the essence of true reliability and personal integrity. The 19th verbal habit that screams weakness and insecurity is over-apologizing. Think of phrases like, "Sorry to bother you," "Excuse me, can I ask a dumb question?" Or, "Oh, I apologize. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." Certainly knowing when to apologize, when you've genuinely made a mistake, is a vital mark of strength and maturity. However, there's a whole group of people who apologize constantly, seemingly for their very existence. They apologize when asking a question, when offering an opinion, or when requesting assistance. This type of behavior is rooted in low self-esteem and a deep fear of inconveniencing others. The constant apologizer transmits a powerful non-verbal signal to everyone around them. "I'm not important. My needs and thoughts don't matter. I don't deserve your time or attention." This places them in an inherently weak position in any communication. People inevitably start treating them that way. Their opinions are ignored, and their requests are pushed to the bottom of the list. Stoicism teaches us to respect ourselves just as much as we respect others. A wise person understands they have the same right to exist, to hold an opinion, and to claim their time as anyone else. They won't act arrogant or aggressive, but they certainly won't apologize simply for existing. Instead of the timid, "Sorry to bother you, I have a question," the confident and polite approach is, "Do you have a minute? I need your help with something." Instead of, "Pardon me for the stupid question," they simply state, "I need to clarify one point to better understand the situation." And instead of, "Oh, sorry for interrupting," they say, "I see you're busy right now. When would be a good time to talk?" Do you feel the difference? The action is the same, but the delivery changes everything. Confident speech demonstrates self-respect and consequently earns respect from others. It shows that you value both your own time and the time of the person you're speaking to. So, conduct an audit of your communication habits. If the word sorry has become a filler word, a verbal tick, start consciously eliminating it in situations where you are not at fault. Reserve your apologies for times when they are truly necessary. The rest of the time, interact with the world from a position of quiet dignity. You have every right to do so. And finally, the 20th, the most insidious thing a truly wise person would never utter. It's not one specific phrase, but an entire category of speech. Gossip. Did you hear what's going on in their department? You won't believe what she pulled yesterday. Rumour has it he's about to be fired. Engaging in gossip seems harmless, perhaps even bonding sometimes, but it actually holds enormous destructive potential. First, gossip is food for the ego, but it's toxic food. By discussing the flaws and failures of others, we momentarily feel better, superior, more righteous. But this is an illusory feeling of superiority, built entirely on someone else's misfortune. It doesn't make us genuinely better or happier in the long run. Second, by spreading unverified and often false information, we inflict real damage on the reputations of others. Words can wound just as deeply as any weapon. Third, and this is the most critical point from a Stoic perspective, engaging in gossip is a monumental waste of our most valuable currency, our time and attention. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself, "Do not waste the rest of your life in thoughts about others unless it be with reference to some common utility." A truly smart person understands that their mental energy is finite. They won't expend it picking apart colleagues or neighbours. Instead, they direct that energy toward what truly matters: self-improvement, their work, caring for loved ones, and understanding the world around them. When someone tries to pull them into such a conversation, they don't give a lecture. They might simply change the subject. Speaking of work, I actually wanted to get your advice on the new project. Or they might politely excuse themselves. They create a space free of negativity and idle chatter. They are interested in ideas, not people. They care about solutions, not problems. They prefer discussing what can be improved rather than focusing on who is to blame. Refusing to gossip isn't merely a matter of ethics, it's a matter of mental hygiene. Just as you wouldn't knowingly eat spoiled food, you shouldn't feed your mind toxic information. Focus on what is within your control, on what genuinely makes you and the world around you better. Do this, and you will see how the quality of your life and your thoughts fundamentally changes. So we've covered a whole arsenal of words and phrases, the mental viruses that weaken us from the inside out and damage our relationships. These range from the childish cry of, "That's not fair," to the destructive belief, "I can't," from the arrogant dismissal, "I know everything," to the venom of toxic gossip. At first glance, these might seem like just words, but as we've explored through the lens of Stoic wisdom, they are much more than that. Every single one of these phrases is a reflection of our mindset. It's a choice. The choice to be a victim or the author of your own life. The choice to complain or to take action. The choice to retreat into the cocoon of your ego or to open yourself up to growth and engagement with the world. The main takeaway here is simple, yet incredibly profound. Change your language. Change your reality. When we start controlling what comes out of our mouths, we learn to control our thoughts. And by controlling our thoughts, we gain that inner fortress, that tranquility and wisdom, which the Stoics sought 2,000 years ago, and which is so vital for us today in our chaotic and unpredictable world. This won't happen overnight. It requires daily practice and constant self-observation. But every single time you catch yourself using one of these phrases and consciously replace it with something more constructive, you take one more step toward becoming the best version of yourself. Thank you for watching this video until the end. If you found it helpful, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future lessons in wisdom for modern life. Now I have a question for you. Which of the phrases we discussed resonates with you the most? And which one are you ready to give up starting today? Write your honest answer in the comments below. Let's start this journey toward conscious language together.